So our presenter today is Patrick McCandless, and he has kindly agreed to present his webinar, Discovering Your Brand, for the AIG group and principally the AIG mentoring program, which is part of the distance program, but also includes attendees from all of the mentoring programs around Australia. And Patrick is based in Vancouver. So it is 7 o'clock in the evening in Vancouver at the moment. And that is one of the reasons why this webinar is presented at 12 midday Australian Eastern Standard Time, to make sure that Patrick is not in the middle of his night's sleep. Patrick has 45 years mining industry experience over a wide range of base and precious metal deposits. He's managed large-scale exploration projects for senior and junior mining companies, focusing on porphyry coppers, volcanogenic massive sulfides, epithermal golds and diamonds. He was part of the Imperial Metals team that discovered copper-gold northeast zone in British Columbia and high-grade gold zone 144 in Nevada. He's been recognised by his efforts principally in mentoring with women in mining, and he has a numerous number of awards relating to that. Significant contributions to professional geoscience and outstanding community service. He's a guest lecturer of over 150 universities, colleges across Canada, US, South America and Europe. And he's provided a practical set of tools to assist geoscience students in their career development. Last year, Patrick presented a similar webinar for us in the mentoring program. So I would like to welcome Patrick and welcome you all to this webinar, and I'll hand it over to Patrick now.
Yeah, thanks very much, Doug, for the kind intro, and thanks everybody for joining me today. And I think by way of introduction, I'd like to say that I've got a really strong passion for rocks and to discover. And I think it's really that passion that led me to eventually becoming a professional geoscientist, helping companies discover economically viable deposits of gold and copper around the world. And that led to a very successful career in the mining industry. And now my focus has switched, and now I'm helping students and professionals discover their greatness. And really what we're going to be doing to discover your greatness is we're going to be uncovering your ability and uniqueness to make a difference. So really that's what this Discovering Your Brand is all about, is discovering your uniqueness to make a difference. So another way of looking at this workshop is it is a launching of your career. That's our intention. But really right now at this point in your whole career development, you're kind of what I think is in pre-launch mode. And so we've been sitting in this academic cocoon for quite some time, and we've been gaining knowledge and perhaps some skills, and at some point you're going to be graduating, whether it's with a Bachelor of Science or Engineering or onto a Master's or PhD, but at some point you're going to be completing the formal education process. And at that point, often we're faced with the question, okay, so now what? What are we going to do with this degree and all of this knowledge and skills that we've acquired in this formal education process? And so really for the next step, it can be a little bit overwhelming, and for some students, it often feels like walking off a cliff. You can get a sense of where you want to be heading with your career, but there seems to be this gap between where you are right now, which is learning, and where you intend to go, which is earning. So really what I'm trying to do today and what we're going to be accomplishing is really giving you a set of practical tools to get you moving along on your career path, whatever career path that might be. So first step we want to consider in this process of launching your career is to get you to start thinking about separating yourself out from everybody else. There's lots of people who are graduating with similar degrees, so on and so forth. So we have to start thinking about separating ourselves out from the pack or the school. And so to do that, we want to discover your uniqueness. What is it about you that has uniqueness in the context of making a difference? Another way I like to look at this is when we look at this group of cows in this field, generally speaking, they're all looking about the same. So really what we want to do with you today is we're going to take one of these cows and we're going to turn it into something unique. In this case, a purple cow. And if we go back to that field and we throw in a purple cow, I think we would all agree that that cow stands out and really in unique ways. And so that's what we're going to be doing with you today in this workshop. We're going to be discovering your specific uniqueness and how you make a difference. So the good news about all this is prospective employers that you're going to be facing and recruiters and HR people. There's actually a new trend in hiring simply because 65% of our skilled workforce are leaving in the next 5 to 10 years due to retirement. So recruiters, for example, need to look at people in a different way when they look at your resume or they're speaking to you in an interview. What they're looking for is potential, simply because you don't have the necessary work experience. Because in the past we used to say, okay, so yeah, this person's got 15 or 20 years worth of experience. That's the person we're going to hire. That's not the trend anymore, where there's a tendency now with companies to grow people. And in order to grow people into positions, they need to have the potential to build value. So this is the first sort of key point here in looking at your uniqueness. It's in the context of building value or making a difference. So what do we mean by that? So what are they looking for, recruiters and HR people and prospective employers, when they're looking at your resume? How can they see this potential value? Well, it turns out I've talked to many recruiters, and they use what they call value indicators. And there's a whole bunch of them, but there are 4 specific ones. So these are the value indicators. This is what shows your potential to make a difference. This is what they want you to bring to the job. So pretty simple and pretty obvious. Obviously, we want you to bring passion. In other words, we want you to be excited about being in the job space. We want you to be working hard and perhaps harder than expectations. This is a key one because the fact that we're going to be hiring people that don't have a lot of experience, we're going to be inserting them into positions of responsibility rather quickly. And so it means being challenged, and we don't want people giving up. So persistence is key. And the final one of the 4 key value indicators is improving or always learning. So there they are: passion, work ethic, persistence, always improving or learning. So you're probably looking at these and thinking, okay, I've got these. Okay, that's fine. So how can we see it? How can we see these value indicators when we look at your LinkedIn profile, when we look at your resume, when we have you in front of us in an interview? How can we see this? Well, it turns out there's 4 specific areas that they look at, and one of them is your school experience, and that could be your research project or just not necessarily GPAs. That's not really so much a focus anymore, but more school experience. If you do have work experience, and it can be geoscience or engineering related or not, we look at that work experience. Volunteering. This might come as a surprise, but one of the primary filters that is used by recruiters when they look at a LinkedIn profile is how much volunteering they've done. So, and the logic for this is, and I certainly know for myself as somebody who volunteers a lot, people who volunteer, they typically bring these 4 value indicators into that volunteer space. So that's why it is used by recruiters as a way of assessing your potential to build value. And the last one we've got, so we've got school experience, work experience, volunteering. The last one that they use, which perhaps will also come as a bit of a surprise, is leisure activities. And I think in the past we've been discouraged from including these on our LinkedIn profile or resume. We're now looking at those activities, and I've done this personally when I've been assessing somebody's potential as well. So we're talking about people that have been involved in music or sports, some kind of leisure activities that we can look at, knowing that you're bringing those 4 value indicators. For example, I've hired somebody with very little geoscience experience and 12 years of competitive piano. Somebody who's played hockey or other kind of sports, hired a high school student, graduate with 10 years of gymnastics. All of these people turned out to be outstanding geoscientists. So it works, and so it's a good model to use, and I think that's where we're going to start in starting to discover your uniqueness. So we're going to ask you now to pick an area, one of these 4 areas, be it school experience, work experience, volunteering, or leisure activity. And I want you to give me an example. So hopefully you have these example value brand statement. We have 2 worksheets. If you don't have this worksheet, don't worry. Just take a piece of paper and with a pen or a pencil, write down example statement. And if you do have the worksheet, great, go to the example statement. I'm just going to give you an example of what I would like to see. So for example, if you chose a combination of the school experience and volunteering, your short statement, 1 sentence, very short, would be something like, my experience in Nepal is a good example. So I want you to end your statement with, is a good example. So here's a volunteer example. Being a volunteer coach at YMCA in Fraser Valley Basketball is a good example. Here's an example. This is actually an engineering student, school experience and work experience. My work experience in Chile was what put me on the path. Here's a work experience one. Working for Lafarge in Switzerland is a good example. So obviously I can't see you doing this, so I'm going to have to give you time to do this. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds and then we're going to move on. So 30 seconds, I want you to create an example statement that relates to either something you've done in the school experience, volunteering, work experience, or leisure activity. So I'll give you 30 seconds, go. Okay, hopefully you were able to write something down. Even if you've got it in point form, that's fine. You can work out your example statement. So, okay, so there's the first step. We've got now an example statement, and you'll see where the relevance of these statements are as we move along through the workshop. But here we are. We've started now. We've got an example statement. Now what we want to do as we move along this discovery process to find out your uniqueness and how you create value, we're now going to create a second statement related to the value, to the example statement rather, that says this is how I created value. So back to the worksheet, the example value brand statement worksheet, second section, B section, value statement. Describe how you created value or made a difference with respect to your example statement. So to help you out in this process, I'll give you the example. So here's the example statement of the person that did volunteering in Nepal as part of their school experience. So that was the example statement. Here's the value statement. I created a landslide hazard map for local communities to implement in future development. Okay, so that is how this Cornell student created value. So my work experience in Chile was what put me on the path. How did they create value? Well, they created some pretty fancy math to improve material characterization. A couple of more. So here's the volunteer one. Volunteer coach. How did this person create value? I created an activity that gave underprivileged kids an opportunity to learn and develop new skills. And finally, working for Lafarge in Switzerland, optimized blasting operations. So that was more engineering related, but hopefully you get the sense of what we're trying to do here. So you've got your example statement. Now, how did you create value? And if you're thinking, well, wait a minute, now this has got nothing to do with geoscience, absolutely. Not concerned about that because we're assessing your potential to create value. So we're needing references to be able to see how you have done in the process of creating. Because if you create value as a volunteer, we're pretty confident that that's going to translate into the workspace. Okay, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to create a value statement. Go. Yeah, and again, if you just do it in point form, that's fine. You can flush it out, but the key is it needs to be short and one sentence. So now what we've got are two statements. We've got an example statement and a value statement. So far, these are like pieces of the puzzle. We're starting to put together something that's going to be representative of your brand. Okay, so here we are. We're now starting to show how we create value. And again, doesn't have to be geoscience related. It's just in the context of making a difference. It's all we need to assess in you. We're going to teach you our way of doing geoscience and practicing geoscience. But we need you coming with the ability to make a difference and create value, no matter what the context is. So what we're going to do now is create a personal brand. So in the theme of uniqueness, personal means unique. Everybody is going to be creating their own brand. And so your personal brand, two oculars for you to go through this process. So we want you looking at how you see yourself in the context of creating value or making a difference, and also how others see you. In other words, the feedback you've been getting from teachers and coaches and supervisors and even parents. What, all the things that you've done to make a difference. So how others see you, how you see yourself. So we're going to take inventory now of how you see yourself and how others see you. So we're going to be looking at 5 areas. We're going to be looking at your strengths, skills, values, passions, goals. Let's start with strengths. So a strength to me means something that comes naturally to you, something that is innate and has been with you since a very young age. So on the second worksheet, personal brand inventory worksheet under strengths, and again, if you don't happen to have these sheets, just write on a separate piece of paper, strengths, and I want you to write down 3 strengths, something that comes naturally to you. And I'm going to help you out a little bit. I'm going to give you a guide or a list of strengths. And if you have a strength that is not on this list, that's okay. You can write that down. So what I want you to do is I want you to pick 3 strengths, something that comes naturally to you, write them down, and then circle the one that's most relevant. Going to give you 30 seconds. Go. Should jump out at you, hopefully. Okay, so and don't forget to circle the one that's most relevant. By the way, on my website, geodudecorner.com, all these lists are on the website. So if you have to revisit, that's fine. Skills. Okay, skills are like strengths, and we're not talking necessarily about geoscience skills at this point, because you're potentially going to be competing against somebody who's got a lot more geoscience skills. So we want to focus more on soft skills. So skills to me are something that you've learned. So it might be the same as the strengths. Maybe you've just learned more of something that comes naturally to you. That's fine. But these are learned skills. So second section on the personal brand inventory worksheet under skills, let's pick 3 and circle the one most relevant. So same list. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Pick 3, circle the one most relevant, go. And again, if there's a word that's not on this list, I couldn't obviously include all the words, then make sure you add that word. Okay, hopefully you've picked 3 and circled one most relevant. Values. Values are simply something that's important to you, or principles. So under the third section, values, and again, if you don't have this worksheet, just write down the word values, and I want you to pick 3 principles that are important to you. And we've got a different list. So a value for me is integrity. That stands out probably more than anything. Okay, so I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Pick 3, circle one most relevant. Ready, go. Okay, yeah, this is not an easy process, but hopefully you've got 3 and you've circled one most relevant. Moving on, so now we've looked at strengths and skills and values, and we're now going to move to passions. So, what is your passion? And when I'm not doing guest lecturing or practicing geoscience, I'm the lighting technician for an Irish dance troupe. So that's probably pretty random, but nonetheless, that's my passion away from geoscience. So, what's your passion? So, what I want you to do under passions is write down an activity, and it could be anything. It could be a sports related thing, it could be a leisure activity, it could be volunteering, it could be reading, anything. So write down an activity. Now, most importantly here, we want to focus on what the feeling is. This is all going back to passion, work ethic, persistence, always learning. Want to know what the feeling is when you do something that you're excited about, something that you love to do. So a new list. So again, if there is a feeling that's not listed here, that's fine. Write it down. I want you to pick 3 feelings and circle the one most relevant. 30 seconds, go. All right. Hopefully you've got 3 and you've circled one most relevant to you. So the last thing we're going to be looking at are goals. Now, of course, short-term goals is completing the formal education process, perhaps getting a job, that sort of thing. What I want you to do is, in a very short sentence, what do you see yourself doing 5 years from now? And it doesn't have to be geoscience related. It can be volunteer related. It can be a leisure activity related. Just what are you going to be doing 5 years from now? So 5 years from now, I'm hoping to do a TED Talk. That's a 5-year goal. Whether that's going to happen or not, I don't know. But what is it for you? So let's go to section E, goals. Just a short sentence. What are you going to be doing 5 years from now? I'm going to give you 30 seconds and go. Okay, perfect. So if you need a little more time on that, you can always go back to that and complete that. So the next part in this exercise, I would say, is the most challenging, yet it is the most foundational and important. Which one word describes you? This is really, really important because in interviews, often that question comes up. How can you best describe in a few words or even one word how you're going to help our company grow? That's kind of a typical question. So really, to address that, we want you to consider an action word. So the reason the word that best describes how you make a difference and create value, we want it to be an action word because it implies you're going to do it. Very, very important. So that action word is in the context of making a difference and in the context of creating value. So this is foundational to your brand. This is the most important part of this exercise now. So now we go to section F at the bottom of the personal brand inventory worksheet. Or again, if you haven't got the worksheet, just write down the word action word. So action word best describes how you create value. I want you to pick 3 action words and circle the one most relevant. Again, if there's a word that you think of that is not on this list, that's absolutely fine. Write it down. So I want you to pick 3 and circle the one most relevant. So what is it about you that creates value? Are you always improving? Are you initiating? Are you inspiring? Are you engaging, causing, building, helping, balancing, growing? You know, really, the question you need to ask yourself is, what is it about me in one word that makes a difference? And think about what you've done in the past, be it in volunteering or a leisure activity or in the work experience or school experience, what you're doing now and what you intend to do. So past, present, future in the context of creating value. And it can be any one of those areas: school experience, volunteering, leisure experience, work experience. All right, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Let's write down 3 and circle the one most relevant. Go. And you can go back to the website to have a look at these words if you need to revisit this. So, okay, so what we've now done is hopefully you've created, you've got an action word that is most relevant to you. You've got an inventory that includes strengths and skills, values, passions, goals, all of which are going to help us put together your brand. So your brand, we need to somehow be able to articulate it. We need to be able to say, this is how I make a difference in a unique way. So what we're now going to do is put together a brand statement. So a brand statement is critical to how you introduce yourself. So a brand statement needs to be engaging. It needs to pique interest, curiosity, and it needs to be the length of an out breath. The average attention span of most people is 6 seconds, whether it's in conversation, looking at your resume, your LinkedIn profile. You don't have a lot of time to make a difference and to say, this is how I create value. If you're rambling on, you're going to lose people. So that's the effectiveness of a brand statement. That's all you have. So the purpose of the brand statement is to say, I am unique. I do create value. Probably the most significant thing about a brand statement is you start to attract people to your brand. After all, you want to be working with people that want to help you grow as much as you want to help the company grow. Gets you on people's radar screens. There might not be a job opportunity available when you apply, but perhaps 3 months down the road when they're reviewing applicants, we want you at the top of the list, the person that says, I'm the difference maker. This is how I uniquely make a difference. So here's an example of a brand statement. This is Hannah Lang from Cornell University, making ideas a reality to benefit people in the environment. A very strong statement. She used this statement when she was at a conference, and she was only in third year at Cornell, was already getting job offers. Naturally had to decline them until she graduated, but now she's gainfully employed, simply because she was able to effectively articulate how she creates value. So you have an action word, you've got strengths and skills, you've got a goal, you've got values. So this is, you've got all the ingredients or all the puzzle pieces. Now you need to put it together. Here's an example of an mining engineering student who's now working for a major mining company, building engineering solutions through continuous learning and research. He used that in the interview, got the job. Here's a mechanical engineering student working together to produce innovative and quality solutions. I just talked to him this past weekend, and he's in a co-op program. They absolutely love him because every day he serves this brand, and they absolutely love it. Working together to produce innovative and quality solutions. Here's a business administration student who's working for an LNG company now, leading creative change to build value for business. They all start with the action word. They all contain components of your inventory, and they all reflect how you create value. Very effective. So we've got the action word, you've got inventory. I want you to use your example statement and your value statement to help you build this. We're not going to build right during this workshop just simply because we don't have time. But this is how you're going to be putting this together. So when you put all those ingredients together, you've got yourself a brand statement. So on the example value and brand statement worksheet, this is where you're going to be putting your brand statement, 10 words or less, starting with an action word. So to help you in this process, please copy down geodudecorner.com. That's going to be your reference. I've got all kinds of examples in resumes and example statements, both or including example value and brand statements. So just guides to sort of help you get through the process of creating a brand statement. So the way I can help you, one of the most effective ways, is I want you to write down this site that you're going to be posting on. It's called Edmodo, EDMODO. And when you go on that site, you're going to be posting your example, value, and brand statements. It's just us that are going to be able to see them. And it's going to give me the ability to be able to help you out and maybe tweak your brand statement a bit based on what I see with the example and value statements. So when you go on the site, you click I'm a student, put your first name and last name in. It's pretty obvious. This one thing you're going to need to write down is the class code, lowercase u, 92 lowercase z, I, m. So that's u, 92 Z-I-M. So hopefully you've got that. Just create a username, whatever you want. Throw in your email. Create a password. So these are all pretty straightforward things to do. It doesn't cost any money, so you just click on it, and then up comes your name. And then where you're going to put your brand statements in is where it says type your note here. And that's what it's going to look like. I want you to put the example, value, and brand statements. Those three statements. Our group is AIG 2018 Personal Branding Workshop. Once you put in the code, it'll show up. AIG 2018 Personal Branding Workshop. This doesn't show that. This was another workshop that I did. So once you've put you can see it's the AIG branding workshop on the top, and you've posted your example, value, and brand statements, then you can hit send. I'm going to be providing my email address at the end. So if you're having trouble with this, just send me an email and with the three statements, and I can help you out that way as well. So I just want to give you an idea of what we're going to do with this very, very powerful brand statement, which, by the way, is probably going to be one of the most important things that you're going to do in your career. This is the first job you get, won't be the last job, so you'll be constantly building a network, and as you build a network, we want you to be building it effectively. And I know from working with hundreds and hundreds of students and professionals, graduates, they're having tremendous success at conferences, luncheons, one-on-one conversations, interviews, using their brand statement at the right time to say how they create value. So we're going to look at some brand products. So let's assume for a moment you have your brand statement. So what do we do with this brand statement now? So one of the things that I want you to be creating is what I call a brand card. So in doing that, you need to create a brand image. So this is Hannah Lang, who's a environmental geoscience student. So it's a picture of her collecting data in the field. So if you don't have a geoscience picture, pretty easy to get one. Just get a colleague to snap a photo of you at an outcrop, wailing away on it with your rock hammer, whatever the case, even Photoshop something. It's pretty easy to get a geoscience related picture. The key is I want that image to somewhat reflect your brand statement. So we develop the brand statement first, then we create a brand image, and we're going to be using that brand image virtually everywhere. It's going to be in your LinkedIn profile, card, resume, cover letter, Facebook, everywhere. Here's Hannah's image, contact information. You can put your school logo with their permission. That's okay, that's fine. So really just on the front, she's got her name and contact information, brand image. So on the back of the card, so this becomes a mini resume. In this case, she has her brand statement on the back. I'd prefer it on the front, but in this case, she chose the back. That's okay. And then she's got her experience and skills. And you've already written down a number of skills. And if you've got some geoscience related skills, you can add those as well. Okay, so here's Mohammed. And Mohammed said he didn't have an engineering picture. So he borrowed somebody's hard hat and cruiser vest and photoshopped a copper mine in the background. And there he goes. He's got himself a brand image, and he's got his name and contact information. There's where I'd like to see the brand statement, right underneath and you look at that brand statement, building engineering solutions through continuous learning and research, nice fit to the brand image. So when you go to a conference, and when I go to a conference and I've collected 50 cards, when I get back to the hotel room, I can't remember half the people I was talking to, but I'll definitely remember the ones that have got an image and a brand statement. Those aren't going to get thrown out. On the back, skills. So again, mini resume. Got lots of examples of these on my website. Check those out. Let's move on to brand resume. I can't emphasize enough that a resume is a follow-up product. It's not an introduction one. Again, you've only got 6 seconds. What we're going to talk about shortly is networking. That's your frontline introduction to your brand statement. So a brand resume, this is the issue. Right? You're not the only one applying for a job. So I talked about 6 seconds. That's how long a recruiter spends on a resume on average. So if you can't show how you build value in that amount of time, you're probably not going to read it. So that includes the cover letters. So we need to be a little more effective. So I'm going to say right at the outset here that I find resume rules conflicting and rather confusing. So do this, don't do that. I mean, honestly, really, the most important rule you need to focus on is the 6-second rule. That's all you get to get somebody's attention. So to sort this out, I talked to a newspaper editor of mine. I told him about the 6-second rule, and he said, yep, we got the same issue with the newspapers. So I said, what do you do? He said, well, the way we capture people's attention is we use image. So we've just been talking about that. That's the first thing they're going to look at in your resume is an image. So an image that tells a story, and then once you've captured their attention, you need to hold it for 6 seconds. So what newspapers do is they do a headline. They tell essentially the whole story in one line. And sometimes they use a subheadline to draw you into the story. So, and that's my point about this, is you need to draw people into your story. We start our resumes off with all kinds of random things about education and objectives and all that sort of stuff, and everybody's doing that, and you're not necessarily being as effective as you need to be in drawing people into the story. So with that model in mind, capturing attention, image. So let's say and it's also important for you to know that we're not going to compromise the content of your resume. As far as I'm concerned, it's perfect. So we're not going to fool around with the content. What we're going to adjust is how you present yourself in a way that captures and holds attention. So let's just say we took a blank piece of paper for your resume and we put your name there, big letters, email address, phone number, no address. Address at this point in the introduction is not relevant. What we want to put there instead is brand statement. So how's this look? We've now got their attention. We're going to use image, whether it be school experience, work experience, volunteering, even leisure activity. Okay, this is what it looks like. Okay, so Hannah's picked 2 images, both related to making ideas a reality to benefit people in their environment. When you see those images and you look at that brand statement, it just invites people into the story. I've talked to people who have read this resume and many other students who have created similar formats, and the response is the same. Yes, it piqued my interest. So there it is. That's how we capture the attention. Now, we need a headline statement. So we need a way of sort of summarizing essentially where you're at and where you're going and what you're skilled at. So underneath the brand statement, we're putting in a box basically a little statement that says, this is where I'm at, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm skilled at. And then after that, we create a skill summary. So you'll notice, just going back to that headline, I've bolded various skills: geohazard assessment and mitigation, geological mapping, etc. And it could be communication, all kinds of different soft skills. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take each one of those bolded skills and bring it down as a single skill and describe it in one word. So that's where we have the skill summary. So I don't have time to go into a lot of detail on resumes. I can help you out with that, but in the meantime, you can go onto the website and get an idea of what's going on. So Hannah's resume got all the content. You know, she's got her work experience, volunteer experience, awards, all kinds of different things, but really the whole story is in the first page. And your skill summary can leak on to the second page. Really, doesn't matter. 1 page, 2 pages, 5 pages, 8 pages. I've hired people with 12-page resumes. Doesn't really matter. If they like your story, they're going to read it. 6 seconds. That's what we need to focus on. So, you know, your resume is fine. And again, it's a follow-up product. There's a standard resume. It's okay. Not putting it down. It's absolutely fine. But if we look at a purple cow resume, you tell me or think about which one is going to stand out in a stack of 150. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Let's talk about networking. This is key. It's very, very important that you get this, that 80% of jobs are acquired through networking. If you're not talking to people, your chances of getting a job are diminished dramatically. So this is an opportunity for you to market your brand. So networking opportunities could be conferences, any kind of luncheons, banquets, trade fairs, things going on at university, one-on-one conversations, interviews. They're all opportunities to market your brand. So you've got a brand statement, but the thing is, when you say your statement, you need to validate it. You need to back it up. Well, the good news is you've done that. This is where the example and the value statements come in. You can already, and even though it's not necessarily geoscience related, doesn't really matter. Your brand statement says in 10 words or less, this is how I create value. Your example and your value statements back it up. So we're going to show you how this works. So here's Hannah's brand statement, and I've color-coded it for a reason. Making ideas a reality to benefit people in the environment. Here's the example statement. So when somebody says, so Hannah, tell me about yourself. I'm a geology student making ideas a reality to benefit people in the environment. Well, 9 times out of 10, what happens is people say, oh, really? So how does that work? Well, my experience in Nepal is a good example, is how you respond to that. And then you follow up immediately by saying, I created a landslide hazard map for local communities to implement in future development. So when you're putting your brand statement together, I want you to be looking at your example and value statements and making sure they connect well. Making in the brand statement connects well with created in the value statement. Ideas connects well with landslide hazard map. Reality, implement, benefit, future development, people, communities. Perfect matching. So again, I've got lots of examples on the website. So as you're putting this brand statement together, refer to your example and your value statements and make sure there's a good connection. And when you post, I'll be looking at that to make sure that your brand statement connects well and resonates with me. If it resonates with me and you're comfortable with it, you're set. So there we are. We got the 3 statements. So here's an example of this is exactly what Hannah did at a major conference, and this is what I want you to do. I know it might feel awkward walking up to somebody that you don't know, but nobody's going to bite. So really, you walk up to somebody at a conference, let's say in Sydney or Brisbane, and you say your name. In this case, hi, my name's Hannah. And you just start to ask engaging questions. What brings you to the conference? I mean, that's a good opening line. What brings you to the conference? Okay, so they go on, blah, blah, blah. I'm here to look at gold exploration, so on and so forth. You're just listening. So as you're listening, ask more questions. So another question you might ask is, oh, so what company do you work for? I work for ABC company. Oh, really? And what's your involvement with them? Well, I'm VP of Expert, so on and so forth. You're asking lots of questions. Lots of questions. What company do you work with? What are your responsibilities with the company? Just fire off a bunch of questions. Be consistent with your script. This is where you don't go off script. You say your brand statement. When somebody says, so Hannah, tell me about yourself, or what are you doing? Right? You've had that question lots of times. So all you say is, I'm a geology student, or I'm an engineering student, whatever the case may be. In this case, I'm a geology student. Stick to the script. I'm a geology student, then say your brand statement. All you got is 6 seconds. Making ideas a reality to benefit people in the environment. What happened with Hannah and what typically happens with most people that are using brand statements. Oh, that's very interesting. Tell me more about that, right? So in other words, you've captured their attention. Very few, this person has probably talked to 70 people at the conference. Nobody has come out and made a statement like that. Tell me more about that. Now you get to validate your brand statement. So you give your example. Well, my experience in Nepal is a good example. Then you fire off your value statement. I created a landslide hazard map for local communities to implement in future development. What now happens is you've got them into your story. Now you can be talking about other things. The conversation might go on and on. Now this doesn't always, it's like fishing. You don't catch a fish every time. So if you say your brand statement and there's no interest, you just move on, right? You thank them very much. But the important thing is always exchange cards and then follow up. Always thank people for taking the time, exchange cards. So my brand statement is helping students and professionals discover their greatness. So the brand statement is typically general because you have to think, I've got 45 years in the mining industry. I've made all kinds of discoveries. I've won all kinds of awards, whatever the case may be. Not necessarily reflected in this brand statement, but this is me. So when you create your brand statement, I want it to be answered that this is me. So this is what I do. I've been doing this since probably grade 3, helping students and professionals discover their greatness. This is what I did in university. This is what I did throughout my entire career. This is what I'm doing right now. This is me. And initially I had discovering as my action word, but that wasn't me because I'm in the elementary schools as well. And it's more about helping students and professionals discover their greatness. That's what we're doing with you today. I want you to write down this email, pmcandless, PMCANDLESS @telus.net. So if you're having trouble posting, definitely just post the example value and brand statements via the email, and one way or another will help you out. So this is a long-term commitment on my part. It's no cost to you. Really, I'm here to support your career development, and I feel very privileged to be working with AIG to help in a mentorship program to help our next generation make a difference in our natural resource sectors. That's all I've got, and I would be more than happy to answer some questions. Doug?
Well, thank you, Patrick. I'm clearly going to have to revisit my brand statement. It's interesting that a couple of weeks ago we had a mentoring meeting here in Brisbane, and we discussed the elevator pitch, which is very similar to the brand statement, and I can see the brand statement being very useful in that elevator pitch.
Yeah, so the elevator pitch, if I can just comment on that very, very briefly, elevator pitches are okay, but they are long and they talk more about skills, and what the brand statement does is it is more about this is me and how I have, do, and intend to create value. So it's more personalized and it's shorter. That's the key. It's got to be lots and lots and lots of research has been done on how things resonate with people, and it's time and shortness. If we're more than 10 words, we're in trouble.
Yes, good. I see one question has come up in the chat area, and that's from Clint Caldicott. I'll just repeat that.
Yeah, if you could read it. I don't have the, unfortunately, I don't have the chat part up and running here, but yeah, if you just read it, that'd be fine.
Yeah, sure. And I'll unmute all the microphones so that we can have a general discussion from now. The question from Clint is, what do you say about using colours in your resume in both text and in the borders?
Yeah, so let's again reiterate that resumes are a secondary piece, and if you want to use colors, that's fine. Talking to recruiters, especially colored paper, they don't like that for whatever reason. But if you like it, I'm okay with that. I think you can use whatever colors you want and whatever size of font and type of font. Long as you've got your image and your brand statement and it's simple and clean, I think we're in good shape.
Which is a bit annoying, but that's okay.
No, that's okay.
Okay, are there any other questions for Patrick? And by the way, yeah. Patrick, we have two people here who are senior people who are not students, but they're part of the mentoring program. And from last year, we also had a couple of the mentors join this webinar. And the feedback from them was that it was very useful to them, even.
Yeah, and I can help the mentors. I would be more than happy to do that. As my brand statement says, helping students and professionals. So, gosh, I work with within mentoring programs. I do presentations for the mentors with their mentees. I do that at a number of different associations. And I work with professionals. I just finished working with a professional engineer who owns his own company, has a PhD, but he wanted a personal brand. He felt that was, he wanted a more effective way of saying how he creates value.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Yeah, type them in.
Or you can just speak up.
Unfortunately, I missed the start of it, but it sounds very good to me.
Oh, thank you so much, and I'm sorry you missed whatever you missed. I can help you out with that. So. Really, as long as you got take some inventory and create an example and value statement, we're off and running. If not, we can set up a Skype call and I'll walk you through the whole process again.
That's very generous of you. No, I think I'll be right to put something together.
Okay, fantastic. And I just cannot emphasize enough the success. I mean, if you go on the website, there's all kinds of testimonials, but beyond that, I can say that this is all based on student and professional success stories. People that have, I've got a great story, and I've worked with some very, very shy people and people that found this whole brand statement piece quite challenging. And so I do these workshops all around the world, and various disciplines, law, medicine, and I was in a junior college, and it was a landscaping diploma program. And a young man, Robert, came up to me afterwards and said, okay, I've done my brand statement, but I just can't do this. I literally get sick if I have to talk to somebody. And I said, well, okay, so let's think about this for a minute. Now you've got a landscaping diploma. What are you going to do with that? And he said, well, I'm going to start my own business. And I said, well, okay, awesome. So what have you done so far? He said, well, I bought a bunch of equipment and I got my truck and I'm all set to go. And I said, well, who are your clients? And he said, well, I don't know. So I sent him off to the Home and Garden Show. And I actually went with him. I didn't stand beside him, but I was off in the corner.
Hold on, I've got a quick
with
question.
my iPhone. And I said, look, all you got to do is walk up to somebody, introduce yourself, and ask a bunch of questions. And then when they ask you something, you've got your script. You got your brand statement. And if they're interested, then you've got your example and value statements. And so Robert walked up to the first person, and this was incredible for him to even do this. And he said, hi, my name's Robert. What brings you to the Home and Garden Show? And they said, oh, gee, thanks for asking. Blah, blah, blah. I'm here to do this, do that. And so, Robert, what do you do? So normally at this point, he would have either passed out or left or got sick or did something other than what he should have been doing. But all he said was, I'm a landscape gardener creating gardens with hidden surprises. That's all he said. That's his brand statement. Well, right away they said, well, what do you mean hidden surprises? How does that work? And so he backed it up with an example and value statement. So 3 years hence, like Robert's got his own landscaping company, he's got 10 employees, and he's got too much work. So there's I wanted to give you one of many examples of people, even though it might seem challenging to use a brand statement, it works.
Very good, Patrick. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got one. I'm Chris.
Hey, Chris, how you doing, man?
Well, thanks. Well, thanks for that. Fantastic workshop.
Thank you so much.
So basically with this personal branding, you can actually also adopt that or adapt it to or products or services that you may offer in the future business.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's really a matter of probably looking at those things like the example statements and the value statements, working at the strengths and the values and the all those things to create a brand statement, and then actually using that to sell your service.
Absolutely. So it's a personal brand that you've created. And so I've got people who have graduated who are now running their own companies, their own geological consulting companies. And right at the top of underneath their brand image is their brand statement. That's how they sell their product. And it's a general statement. Again, some people say, oh, should I change the brand statement depending on what? No. The brand statement is really just how you create value. So helping students and professionals discover their greatness. It's hard to even tell I'm in the mining industry. All that does is get people into my story. Once they get into my story and they go, holy geez, man, you've done some pretty incredible things, blah, 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 so on and so forth. But I got to get them into the story. I mean, if I start off by saying I'm a professional geoscientist with 45 years, okay, they're not listening.
Yeah, I see how that works.
Yeah, helping students and professionals discover their greatness. I say that everywhere. Every day I say that brand statement. I can say it. I said it at a baseball game. And so my gig is getting speaking gigs. I mean, I do this all on a volunteer basis. So I was at a baseball game and I was talking to the lady beside me. I said, hey, what brings you to the baseball game? And blah, blah, blah. And she said, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a professional. All I said was I'm a guest lecturer helping students and professionals discover their greatness. Oh, really? Tell me about that. So then I gave an example and value statement. Next thing you know, I'm doing 20 elementary schools. So what if I didn't say anything?
That's it.
Yeah, or I was in a lineup at Starbucks and I said, what brings you to Starbucks? Blah, blah, blah. We go back and forth. It turns out this was at Boise State University. And she said, oh, actually, I'm a guest lecturer. And then I said my brand statement. And then next thing you know, I'm doing a lecture at Colgate University. And then Colgate told Cornell, and then Cornell told Syracuse. And that's how I'm now actually up to 350 universities.
So the key is to actually say that whenever and wherever you can.
And there's the key, is finding the segue. You can't just blast it out at somebody. It's when somebody says, like in an interview, for example, like I do another workshop where we simulate interviews. We do mock interviews. And so at some point in the conversation, in the interview, they say either, so tell me about yourself, or how do you think you're going to create value for our company? Well, when I get the opportunity as a professional geoscientist, I intend to brand statement. So you got to pick your spots, whether it be on a one-on-one conversation, an interview, whatever the case may be, you know, especially all the networking opportunities. So you practice with that, you know, like I practice every day. I just used my brand statement today when I was downtown in Vancouver. I just, you know, it just came around to, so what do you do? I'm a guest lecturer helping students and professionals discover their great. I know 9 times out of 10, the reaction is the same. What? So how do you do that? Get people into your story. So if you're starting a consulting service, you know, you're competing with people that have been in the consulting world for 30 years. So you have to come in with your unique way of creating value. So you end up attracting the right people to your brand, people who like your brand.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm, if that's what your intentions are, boy, you can count on my support to help you out with that.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Good input, Chris. Any other questions?
And that's an offer to anybody and everybody that, you know, it doesn't just stop here with the workshop. That doesn't work for me. You know, if you put together your example, value, and brand statements, that's just the beginning. And then we start then looking at, then we can probably do a one-on-one Skype call. If you're preparing for an interview or you're going to be attending a conference or a career fair, okay, how do I present this? And we actually go through the practice of doing it.
Any other questions? I think we're running out of questions for the moment. So I'd like to thank Patrick for what a great webinar again for the AIG mentoring program. As Patrick has said, he's available. He's given you the email addresses and his website. to get in touch with him. And after last year, I know he had conversations with several of the attendees ongoing.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic, and thank you so much, Doug. It is a privilege to be a part of the AIG mentorship program. I think it's a fantastic program. It's the only way we're going to grow our next generation of geoscientists is to offer this kind of support. So good on you.
Okay, well, I think we'll end the meeting there now, and as if you've got any other questions or want to speak to me, everybody has got my email address, so come back.
I've got my email sitting here on the bottom of the screen for one last look. Anybody wants to send me an email as well, please don't hesitate. Otherwise, I'll look forward to either posts of the example value and brand statements on Edmodo or via email.
Good. I can keep up the network. Thanks very much, everybody.